Across 10 films and 5 television series, there are many iterations of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to watch and enjoy. But which of these iterations are the most Teenage Mutant Ninja and Turtle? I'm going to go through each of the 4 categories and create my definitive ranking of who most accurately portrays each category before assigning points and deciding the overall winner. Quick disclaimer that I will not be discussing any of the comic iterations in this video, in part because I have not read the Mirage or Archie comics. I'm planning to, I promise, but also because of how much the characters and narrative evolve, it makes assessing them a bit more difficult for this ranking. I will also be mentioning spoilers for each of the films and TV shows that I discuss, so this is your official spoiler warning. With that, let's get into our first category. In last place for the teenage category is the animated movie from 2007, TMNT. The turtles in this film are outside of their heyday and are meant to feel a little bit older and less like their energetic teenage selves that they must have been before the movie takes place. Mikey and Donnie are both working jobs while Raph has taken up crime fighting on his own as the Night Watcher while Leo trains in the Amazon. The portrayal of the turtles feels a bit more mature than other iterations, but that's not a bad thing and is arguably the point of this movie. I gave 9th place to the animated Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series from 1987. The turtles in this show are incredibly goofy and absolutely have moments where they feel like teenage brothers just goofing around. However, when we look at them in the context of the 1987 universe, the whole world is pretty unserious and their antics don't make them look particularly young. Especially when we compare them to a character like Zack, who is canonically 14 but acts way younger than them. There is just a really big disconnect there. I absolutely adore the way the voice actors portray each of the turtles, but it really just feels like 4 adult men voicing cartoon characters. Like I said, there are definitely some instances in which the turtles feel like kids, but for the most part they don't feel like teenagers at all. In 8th place for this category are the turtles in the Michael Bay live-action films. The biggest reason they are so low on this list is because of their designs. When they refer to themselves as teenagers while simultaneously being these big, hulking turtle men, there is a lot of cognitive dissonance there. In the first film, the way they behave, they generally don't feel like teenagers either. With the exception of the elevator scene and, though I absolutely hate it and wish it wasn't a part of the movie, Mikey's crush on April. If we take a look at Out of the Shadows, they definitely lean more into the turtles feeling like teenagers with the overarching narrative of them wanting to fit in. But once again, their designs make it really difficult to get behind them being actual teenage boys. In 7th place, I have the turtles from the 2003 animated series. These turtles are actually a really interesting mix of feeling really mature and grown up while also having these incredibly goofy moments where they're just having a good time with each other as brothers. Like with most versions, them acting like teenagers is brought out more when they really lean into that family dynamic, something we absolutely see with this show. However, because of the generally more serious tone in conjunction with their designs making them look like buff green men, they don't really feel like teenagers in this series. In 6th place for the teenage category are the turtles from The Next Mutation. The biggest reason for the turtles feeling so much like teenagers is because of the general ridiculousness and goofiness that the show has in general. Unlike with the 1987 series, though, this portrayal of the turtles feels a lot more like teenage brothers messing around with each other.
We're not brothers.
Well, like brothers, whatever. Venus's interactions with the turtles as well, especially when she and Donnie argue, has that same energy too. That said, these turtles definitely feel older at some points, which makes sense considering they're supposed to be 17, 18 during the series. However, because the primary reason they feel so much like teenagers is because of the general goofiness of the show, like with TMNT 87, I can't put them too high on this list. Next for this category is the live-action trilogy from the 90s. Because the first film from 1990 and the TMNT 2003 animated series are both heavily based on the Mirage comics, the tone is a lot darker and it makes the turtles feel a lot more mature despite having the occasional goofy moment. However, if we look at Secret of the Ooze and TMNT 3, the tone of those films is very lighthearted, and thus the turtles feel a lot more like their age. I know a lot of people, especially longtime fans of the franchise, aren't really a fan of how Secret of the Ooze shifted in tone, but I personally think it works very well for that film, and you see quite a bit of that goofiness in the first film as well. Regardless, that tone shift absolutely makes the 90s turtles feel a lot more like teenagers than their 2003 counterparts. I also think since the first film established this to be a more serious world, their goofiness is highlighted as them acting like teenagers as opposed to The Next Mutation or TMNT 87, where the entire world is kind of goofy in general. In 4th place are the turtles from Batman vs. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Despite the turtles feeling pretty serious and mature during the movie, they absolutely have their instances in which they feel like teenagers. Mikey isn't really the best gauge for how much the turtles feel like teenagers because he is pretty consistently portrayed as the least serious of the bunch. But Mikey in this film is quite honestly the perfect interpretation of Michelangelo and absolutely reads as a teenager. Moving beyond Mikey though, Raph being impulsive and poking fun at his brothers, while Donnie is this massive geek, really reads as teenagers for them as well. Like with most iterations, Leo feels the least like a teenager in this movie, but he also gets the banger line of,
"Well, I'm 16, and I learned this from a rat."
So he at least gets some credit there. Moving into my top 3 for the teenage category, in third place are the Turtles from Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Other than their designs making them look like they should be a lot older than they are, especially Raph, the way the Turtles act in this show makes them undoubtedly teenagers. Rise leans heavily into the family dynamics of these four, and like I mentioned before, that tends to bring out more of the teenage shenanigans. They mess around with each other all the time. In one episode, they act like iPad kids trying to watch skateboarding while simultaneously fighting the Foot. The Mystic Library episode is full of them goofing off. These four absolutely radiate teenage energy, and I am here for it. The top 3 iterations in the teenage category are the ones in which April is also a teenager, and Rise, as well as the other iterations, play off of her very well in that regard. In second place is the 2012 animated series, and like with Rise of the TMNT, they lean very heavily into the family dynamic that really brings out the teenage energy. However, I think the 2012 series leans into them feeling like teenagers more on an individual level. Despite many fans, including myself to some extent, feeling like the romance was unnecessary and or poorly done in this series, experiencing love and dating for the first time is a huge part of being a teenager for many people. I made an entire video diving into the issues with Donnie and April's relationship and how it should have been written better, but Donnie's obsession with April isn't an entirely unrealistic experience for a teenager to have. Of course, Mikey radiates the youthful energy that he has across all iterations, but especially in this series with his love of TV and video games. Leo is a massive dork in the 2012 series in the best possible way when you examine his obsession with space heroes. Like with many other versions of Raphael, 2012 Raph is incredibly sassy and pokes fun at his family all the time, but has his emotional journey and anger issues explored in a way that reminds you that he's just a kid trying to figure things out. Plus, we see him fall fast and hard in love with Mona Lisa, and their whole relationship is young love to a T. Although the 2012 series does have a generally more serious and emotional narrative, the Turtles absolutely radiate teenage energy, and that juxtaposition is why they deserve to be in second place. The winners of the teenage category are the Turtles from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. This film gave itself the goal of focusing on the teenage aspect of the Turtles and absolutely succeeded. Watching any of the promotional material or trailers for Mutant Mayhem, you can absolutely feel the teenage boy energy radiating off of these Turtles. The biggest reason this film is so successful with portraying them as teenage boys is not only because they cast 4 teenagers to play the Turtles for the first time in TMNT history, but also because they filmed together and played off of each other's energy, which made the experience that much more authentic. On top of that, the actors were directly asked and encouraged to incorporate slang into the movie, which is why you see them saying things like Riz. Is this going to age the film in the next decade or so? Absolutely, but Mutant Mayhem easily captures the teenage energy of the Turtles most effectively. Additionally, the main journey the Turtles go through during this film revolves around them wanting to fit in, which is a huge part of being a teenager. I also think Leo's crush on April made him feel that much more like a teenager experiencing those feelings for the first time. Overall, Mutant Mayhem set a goal to focus on the teenage aspect of the Turtles and did an absolutely fantastic job with it, easily making them the winner of the first category. For the second category, I decided to assess somewhat based on the Turtles' designs. However, since most of the Turtles are intentionally animated to be friendly and appealing to a younger audience, I primarily shaped my ranking based on how relevant the Turtles being mutants is to the overall story and how much they are outcast because of it. In last place for this category, I have the 2007 Turtles from TMNT. Other than Leo being taken as the 13th monster at the start of the third act, there isn't really anything relevant to this category in the movie. The story is very much focused on how the Turtles are holding up outside of the glory days of fighting the Shredder, and the main narrative primarily revolves around Raph and Leo's relationship. The general public isn't involved in the main conflict of the film, and because of how isolated the narrative is, their mutation isn't really relevant at any point. Next in the mutant category, in 9th place are the Turtles from Batman vs. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Aside from one moment where Mikey enters a restaurant and people run away screaming, we don't really see the Turtles being outcast as mutants in this film. However, the Ooze plays a huge role in the story with Joker and the Arkham Asylum inmates, as well as Ra's al Ghul and Shredder using the mutagen to mutate their men and make them a more powerful force to be reckoned with. But as far as the turtles are concerned, their mutation isn't really addressed. In 8th place are the turtles from the 90s live action films. April absolutely freaks out at the sight of the turtles for the first time, fainting and then screaming her head off once she comes to. Secret of the Ooze heavily explored the turtles' origins with the mutagen and TGRI, introducing Toka and Razar and having the turtles trying to reverse the effects of the mutagen while also having them fight Super Shredder at the end of the film helped lean into it even more. Although people think the turtles are just people wearing costumes in the little dance scene during Secret of the Ooze, TMNT 3 explores the concept of them being mistaken for yokai in feudal Japan. However, Secret of the Ooze is really the only time their mutation is particularly relevant. In 7th place are the turtles from the 1987 animated series. Although at the start of the series there are moments where the turtles freak people out by being giant turtle men, at a certain point people stop caring, especially when the turtles have become essentially superheroes. Even when the turtles disguise themselves so they don't freak people out, as soon as a threat shows up, they immediately throw off their disguises without a care in the world. The show actually pokes fun at itself with how little people care about there being giant turtles wandering around New York.
Hey, you better camouflage yourself. You know, a 4-foot-tall lizard and all that.
Oh, I see. But a 4-foot-tall turtle is fine.
Hey, please don't argue, just do it.
Not to mention these turtles have probably the cutest designs of the franchise with how round and friendly they are. It's hard to imagine someone running away in terror from the 87 turtles. I was originally going to put the 87 turtles in last place because of the reasons I listed above. However, I then remembered the Red Sky arc. In season 9 of the 1987 animated series, we learn that the turtles' mutation has become unstable and they will temporarily mutate into these somewhat horrifying versions of themselves. At one point, we see what it would be like if Michelangelo triple mutated and he shoots lasers from his elbows. For some reason. The turtles' main goal for the rest of the series is to figure out how to stabilize their mutation while simultaneously being outcast as public enemy number 1. Thanks, Dreg, for that. On top of this, there are several mutants throughout the series, many of which are recurring and tied to the turtles, so the 87 turtles find themselves much higher on this list than I initially anticipated. In 6th place for the mutant category are the turtles from the next mutation. The main conflict of this series is with the Rank, whose leader, the Dragon Lord, wants to eat the turtles in order to gain the abilities that the turtles have been granted by their mutation. Because the motivation of the primary antagonist centers around them being mutants and their mutation is what connects them to Venus, I think it's a lot more relevant than the iterations that I have mentioned on this list so far. However, we don't see any other mutants besides the turtles, and the turtles don't interact with the general human population. The only exception to this is when Mikey throws a rave for the listeners of his radio show in order to raise money for animals, but they presume that they're wearing costumes just like in Secret of the Ooze. So while their mutation is relevant to the foundation of the series, it is not something that is consistently explored. Next up, in 5th place, are the turtles from the 2003 animated series. While this show deals with mutants a lot less than some of the other iterations, TCRI and the Utroms are very heavily related to the turtles' story with their ties to Hamato Yoshi, who served as their guardian before being killed by the Shredder. Additionally, the turtles are depicted as these big buff turtle men, which very much read as mutants. We also see Donnie get double mutated as a result of Bishop and Stockman's mutant outbreak, which is something that isn't explored anywhere else other than TMNT 87. In 4th place is the 2012 animated series. We absolutely see people freak out when they encounter the turtles for the first time, and it probably happens the most in this series compared to the other iterations. Like with 2003, the turtles' mutation ties them to TCRI and the Krang, one of the two main antagonists of this series. Although the 2012 turtles have far fewer personal ties to TCRI compared to the 2003 turtles, mutation is a huge part of TMNT 2012's narrative, not only with the massive presence of the Krang and TCRI, but also with season 2 focused on Donnie developing a retro mutagen. This series references the turtles being mutants a lot, and thus they absolutely deserve to be pretty high on the list. Moving into my top 3 for the mutant category, in 3rd place are the turtles from Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. My biggest reason for having the Rise turtles so high on the list is because of the origin of their mutation. Baron Draxum specifically engineered the turtles using Lujitsu's DNA so they would be strong and skilled fighters. Unlike every other iteration where the turtles' mutation is almost entirely by accident, the Rise turtles were very intentionally and deliberately mutated. On top of this, mutants are a huge part of the Rise universe, especially with the secret underground society of yokai known as the Hidden City. There's also an episode dedicated to Baxter Stockboy starting a witch hunt against the mutant menace in which he tries to out the turtles to the public. The biggest argument against the Rise turtles being so high in this ranking would probably be the fact that we don't really see them being outcast from society as mutants. mutants. But we do see them finding themselves more at home in the Hidden City and with the yokai, plus the fact that their mutation was so deliberate and ties them to the main antagonist of the story makes them deserving of a top 3 spot, in my opinion. In second place, I have the Turtles from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. Like I mentioned in the teenage category, the primary narrative of this film centers around the Turtles wanting to fit in human society, but being unable to due to the fact that they are mutants. Splinter and Superfly being antagonistic forces trying to convince the Turtles that all humans are evil are a huge part of this as well. Cynthia Utrom wanting to extract the mutagen from the Turtle systems is just another layer of their mutation being relevant to this story. I also believe that Cynthia Utrom and TCRI are likely going to become more prevalent in the upcoming 2024 series and the sequel, which is something that will have us explore the Turtles mutation even more. One of the reasons I didn't put these guys in first place is because of the end of the film, where the Turtles are readily embraced and accepted into human society and start going to school. The impact of the Turtles being mutants is it's what makes them outcast, and the fact that they overcome it so easily knocks them down just a little bit in this category. The winners of our second category are the Michael Bay live-action Turtles. You just need to take one look at these guys and you immediately know that they are the undeniable winners of the mutant category. Out of the Shadows specifically explores their mutation and the possibility of them reversing it in order to fit in human society, but they ultimately decide to embrace who they are. Since the Bayverse Turtles not only look the part extremely well, but directly explore their mutation through the narrative, they are easily our champions of the mutant category. The way I interpreted and judged the ninja category is how stealthy and to the shadows the Turtles are, as well as how dedicated they are to their craft as ninjas and how much it pertains to the narrative of the iteration they are a part of. This was partially shaped by other antagonists as well. How prevalent were the Foot compared to some of the other antagonists? But with that, let's get into our third category. In last place are the Turtles from the 1987 animated series. Although this show definitely makes an attempt to lean into the Turtles being ninjas by focusing on their ninja training and calling out their ninja moves, at a certain point they feel more like superheroes than ninjas. The 87 Turtles are eventually well known and recognized in New York as these superhero celebrities. We rarely see them trying to operate in the shadows, and there are several instances in which they just wander the streets of New York without their disguises or a care in the world. They definitely try to be ninjas, but it feels more like them playing dress up as opposed to actually employing ninja discipline. In ninth place, I have the Turtles from Mutant Mayhem for similar reasons. At the start of the film, we absolutely see them using their ninja stealth to complete mundane chores, and they're clearly capable of being sneaky. However, after the big fight at the end of the movie, New York recognizes all of the Turtles as heroes of the city, and they sort of immediately become celebrities, much like with their 1987 counterparts. Especially with the Turtles now going to school, they sort of cast aside that stealthy ninja identity with no longer needing to hide as a result of their acceptance. Additionally, the fact that Splinter is just some random rat that decided to learn ninjutsu from some VHS tapes without having any connection to Hamato Yoshi or some pre-existing ninja clan, it makes the fact that they are ninjas that much more arbitrary. Next up for the ninja category are the Turtles from Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, who I actually have a lot of mixed feelings about when it comes to this category. For the majority of the series, the Rise Turtles very much neglect traditional ninja practices, in part because of Splinter's neglect in training them. When they finally do try to go more by the book in the season 1 finale, they ultimately decide it's not them and they go back to their chaotic ways. The biggest reason I'm so conflicted about the Rise Turtles for this category is because of their ninpo powers. The fact that the Turtles use magic throughout the series makes them feel very much not like ninjas. However, eventually their magic abilities don't come from the mystic weapons they yield, but from the ancient practices of the Hamato clan. So although mystic abilities on the surface feel very antithetical to them being ninjas, in this universe they canonically are tied to their heritage. Because of this, I decided to put them above the Mutant Mayhem Turtles. However, their fighting style and the way mystic powers are arguably the main focus of Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I felt I couldn't really put them too high on this list since those things don't feel particularly ninja-esque. In 7th place, I have the Michael Bay live-action Turtles. As with Mutant Mayhem, it really bothers me that Splinter is just some random rat that picked up ninjutsu just for the hell of it from a random book he found lying in the sewers. Once again, this makes the Turtles being ninjas feel extremely arbitrary. However, when it comes to actually using stealth and employing ninja practices, I think the Bayverse Turtles do a pretty good job. When we first see the turtles in action, we don't get a good look at them because of how swift and stealthy they are. The conflict in Out of the Shadows revolves around them not wanting to stick to the shadows anymore and integrating into human society. However, unlike in Mutant Mayhem, after the Bayverse Turtles save New York, they ultimately decide that they will continue to stick to the shadows and keep their identities secret from the public. Although these turtles are pretty bulky and don't look like particularly stealthy guys, they do a pretty decent job in these films, and I have to give them some credit there. I gave 6th place to the Turtles from 2007's TMNT. Because these turtles are outside of their heyday, like I mentioned before, we don't really see them doing ninja things, especially with Raph taking up the mantle of the Night Watcher and Mikey and Donnie working jobs. However, the central concept of Leo going away to train and become a better leader is a major point in this film's favor for this category. Additionally, the way Raph and Leo go to Splinter and kneel before him out of respect for their master reflects strongly on their ninja discipline. We also see the turtles fight through a big crowd of foot ninja toward the end of the film, so although the 2007 Turtles don't read majorly as ninjas, they definitely have their moments. In 5th place for this category are the Turtles from The Next Mutation. We actually see quite a bit of focus on the turtles utilizing their ninja skills to fight against the Rank and other antagonists. When the turtles need to enter the realm of dreams in order to rescue Master Splinter, they use their ninja moves to focus and enter that meditative state. There is also significant focus on Venus being a shinobi and showing the stuff that she has learned through her training with the turtles. Additionally, these turtles utilize their environment and improvise quite a bit when fighting, something that is emphasized by Master Splinter in several iterations. Although many times these improvisations are pretty ridiculous and played up for comedy, they're a reflection of how well the turtles were trained as ninjas. Next for this category, in 4th place are the turtles from Batman vs. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Like with the Michael Bay and 90s live action films, our first introduction to the turtles comes from them moving through the shadows and fighting the Foot in the dark. This is why Batgirl and Batman assume that the turtles are working with the Foot because they're ninjas that arrived in Gotham at the same time and were both at the lab break-in. The Batman vs. Turtles generally maintain ninja vibes pretty well throughout the film, but the biggest moment comes from Leo's final fight with Ra's al Ghul. The whole fight goes pretty hard, but Leo is finally able to defeat him by using a specific move that Splinter taught him. You know, after kicking him in the balls. Moving into the top 3 for the ninja category, in 3rd place are the turtles from the 90s live action films. These films, especially the first one, do a really good job of making the turtles feel like ninjas. They have such a strong relationship and respect for Splinter, not only as his students, but as his sons. Although they didn't use their weapons directly when fighting in Secret of the Ooze, the turtles utilized their environment and improvised a lot more, which I mentioned earlier is emphasized in other iterations. And of course, we have their introduction where they take out foot soldiers in the dark, which absolutely slays except for this awful throw by Raph. What is this? I give 2nd place to the Turtles from TMNT 2012. There is a ton of focus on the ninja aspect of these turtles. Of all of the shows and films, the 2012 and 2003 series have the most training scenes, most of which tie directly into the theme of the episode. We also see the 2012 Turtles going specifically to Splinter for advice, Leo especially, and he teaches them life lessons through ninja exercises. There is also the way that the Shredder is directly tied to Splinter and how he's a huge part of the Turtles' journey. The Turtles are literally the reason the Shredder came back to New York in the first place. It was a pretty difficult choice between 1st and 2nd place, but because the 2012 Turtles deal pretty evenly with the Foot and the Krang, I decided that 2nd was the best spot for them. The winner of our penultimate category, the most ninja of the Ninja Turtles, are the Turtles from the 2003 animated series. Like with the 2012 series, there is a lot of focus on training, and they have that close bond with Splinter as his students and sons. However, when it comes to the main antagonists and plot of the series, there is a lot more focus on the Foot and the Shredder. The biggest reason that I put the 2003 Turtles above the 2012 Turtles is because of the Ninja Tribunal in Season 5. The entire season is dedicated to the Turtles honing their skills in order to defeat the threat that is the Demon Shredder. Although the Turtles using magical weapons is incredibly similar and the precursor to Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I think the 2003 series does a much better job of relating it to their chi and making it feel relevant to their ninjutsu. This series is very consistently focused on the turtles being ninjas far more than many other iterations, which easily makes them the winner of the ninja category. This was a weird one to judge because you look at any of their designs and it's like, yeah, those are turtles. So while I certainly took appearance into consideration, a major aspect of how I judged this category was how much they act like turtles. Are they amphibious? Do they hide in their shells? Etc. In last place for this category are the turtles from the 2007 movie. These turtles honestly look more like lizards than turtles, plus their shells are so small and loosely fitting. These are some of the weakest turtle designs in my opinion. However, beyond their physical appearance, we don't really see them acting like like turtles either, with the exception of when Leo returns and swims his way back into the sewers. Next, the 9th place spot for the turtle category goes to the 2003 animated series. Although we see the 2003 turtles swimming quite a bit, they look the least like turtles to me. These guys look like buff green men more than anything, especially because the front and back of their shells aren't even connected. The 1987 turtles have a very similar design, but the reason I put them slightly above the turtles in this category is because we do actually see them hiding in their shells in addition to being amphibious at certain points. That said, the 87 turtles do look pretty ridiculous when they try to duck into their shells because it's more like they hide inside their shoulders. It looks really weird. Next, in 7th place, are the Next Mutation Turtles. The biggest issue with these designs is the fact that Venus has breasts, which doesn't make sense for a non-mammalian creature to have. However, I otherwise think they communicate turtle pretty effectively, plus we do have a few hide-in-their-shell moments for these turtles. In 6th place for the turtle category are the Mutant Mayhem Turtles. Despite the fact that we don't really see them acting like turtles during the film, they do look a lot more like turtles than the other iterations that I have mentioned thus far. I really like their designs, but don't have much else to say. I gave 5th place to the 90s live-action turtles. I once again don't have much to say, except they look like turtles and they hide in their shells. In 4th place are the turtles from the Michael Bay live-action films. Despite being these huge looming creatures, I think the Bayverse turtles communicate being turtles very effectively. They're the only iteration of the turtles to actually have nostrils, and although they don't hide in their shells, they utilize them in different ways, blocking gunfire and using them to slide through the sewers. I think that their backstory and connection to April makes them being turtles that much more relevant from a narrative perspective. They do sort of suffer from the big buff men curse that I mentioned earlier, but I think they make up for it in the way that their turtle aspects are highlighted. Moving into our top 3 for the final category, in 3rd place are the turtles from the 2012 animated series. This is the first iteration on this list that pretty consistently and frequently references the fact that they are turtles, showing them being amphibious and ducking into their shells. They also have really solid designs. I think the 2012 turtles do a great job in this category. In 2nd place are the turtles from Batman vs. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I think these designs are some of the most effective at communicating turtle, especially because they're the only ones on this list to draw them with the little turtle beak. The film also has this scene where they infiltrate the Batcave by using their aquatic abilities.
Look, I love being an amphibian as much as the next guy.
Amphibious, we're still reptiles.
I absolutely adore how they incorporate being a turtle into Donnie's character by having him duck into his shell when he's feeling ashamed or embarrassed. He and Mikey also hide in their shells at the end of the film to protect themselves when they fall off of the cloud seeder. I think this film just does a great job with emphasizing their turtle traits. There is an undeniable winner for the turtle category, and that is Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Not only are each of the turtles a different turtle species, but they include behaviors that are relevant to each species as little moments throughout the series. Of these behaviors, the one that I think is the most relevant to this ranking is the fact that Mikey, as a box turtle, really frequently hides in his shell. He does so far more often than other iterations, and it doesn't feel like a forced acknowledgement of him being a turtle, unlike some of the instances in TMNT 87 and The Next Mutation. I love how naturally they incorporated their turtle traits into the series, which makes Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles the easy winner of the turtle category. Now that we've definitively ranked each of the 4 categories, it's time to find out who takes the true title of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Before that though, let's take a quick look at our winners and losers of each of the categories. First, our champion of the teenage category is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, with the loser being the 2007 animated film TMNT. For the mutant category, the Michael Bay Turtles took the cake, and the 2007 Turtles take last place for the second time. Next up, in the ninja category, the 2003 animated series were our champions, with the 1987 Turtles finding themselves in last place. Finally, the champions of the turtle category were the turtles from Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, with the 2007 Turtles in last place once more. And now, without further ado, let's look at the final ranking. In last place are the turtles from TMNT, the 2007 animated film, with a total of 8 points. This movie deviated from typical Turtles content by having it take place outside of the typical time frame that we see the Turtles portrayed. I think it's a really interesting way to explore the Turtles as characters, but as far as the title Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is concerned, they don't do particularly well considering the fact that they were in dead last for 3 of the 4 categories. Unsurprisingly, yet pretty ironically, in 9th place are the Turtles from the 1987 animated series with a total of 10 points. Despite being the most iconic and well-known version of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, when it comes to living up to their name, they don't do a very good job. They never reached above 7th place in any of the categories, so although I love these little guys to death, they unfortunately are in second to last. In 8th place are the Turtles from the Next Mutation with a total of 20 points, and despite being a hot mess of a show, they actually did a pretty decent job with each of the categories. They actually focused quite a bit on them being ninjas, and their mutation was pretty plot relevant as well. Although the ridiculousness of this show is a big part of why it's not a very good series, it brings out the teenage energy in each of the characters a lot. It may not be the best iteration of TMNT, but it does an alright job living up to its name. Despite being the champions of the ninja category, in 7th place are the 2003 Turtles with 22 points. Although these turtles do an excellent job with their portrayal as ninjas, they don't do very well when it comes to being teenagers, especially because of their designs, which also don't look particularly turtle-y. The 2003 series is my personal favorite, but they unfortunately do not reflect the show's title very well. Next up, in 6th place with 23 points, are the live-action Turtles from the 90s movie trilogy. These films are a very solid and good mix of all 4 of the categories, but don't go above and beyond in any of them. Their strongest category was the ninja category, but that was mostly because other iterations didn't really live up to the name quite as well. In 5th place are the champions of the mutant category with 24 points, the Michael Bay live-action Turtles. Although there is quite a bit of criticism leveled at this iteration of the Turtles, they do a pretty good job with most of the categories. This film leaned into the Turtles being mutants and did it very well. Although there are certain elements in the Michael Bay films that I strongly dislike, they do a pretty good job of living up to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle name. And thank God they didn't go with the original concept for these films by making them aliens. I think there would have been no saving them at that point. In 4th place are the Turtles from Batman vs. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles with a total of 25 points. This is honestly one of the most underrated pieces of TMNT media within the community. It is fantastic in so many ways, and that includes how well it lives up to the title Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I love their designs in this movie and how effectively they portray the fact that they are turtles, as well as the way they incorporate the ninja and mutant aspects into the Batman universe. Plus, they have such a great dynamic with each other as teenage brothers. I absolutely adore this movie, and I'm so glad that it did as well as it did in this ranking. Moving into the top 3, in 3rd place are the Turtles from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem with 26 points. These turtles did an absolutely fantastic job embracing being teenagers and did a great job with the mutant category as well. I really wish they leaned into the concept of them being turtles a bit more. There's one scene where all of the mutants are swimming back to the mainland, and instead of swimming alongside them, the turtles are just carried by Scumbug. I'm also really curious how they're going to proceed with the turtles being ninjas with how the film ended. It's easily their weakest category. Overall, this film did some interesting new things with the turtles while simultaneously embracing some of the classic aspects, which I really enjoyed. In 2nd place are our champions of the turtle category, the boys from Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles with 29 points. Although this iteration is notorious for breaking the mold and deviating from what you typically see in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles content, they actually do a really good job of exploring what that name means. Even though their weakest category was the ninja aspect, the way they interpreted it was really interesting and compelling. Plus, it pulled a concept from TMNT 2003, which were the winners of the ninja category. Rise of the TMNT does a fantastic job with the 3 other categories and is the first iteration to specifically explore various turtle species, which is really fun. They may not feel like most versions of TMNT, but the Rise Turtles do an excellent job at reflecting the idea of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And now, the moment we've all been waiting for, the ultimate champion of the title Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are the Turtles from the 2012 animated series with a total of 33 points. Although these turtles didn't take first place for any of the categories, they were very consistently high on the list, never dropping below 4th place. There is a very good reason I recommend this show as someone's introduction to the franchise, because it embraces a lot of the characters and concepts that we see in previous iterations while introducing some new ideas as well. It also has an incredibly emotional and impactful story with goofy moments sprinkled throughout that make it an incredibly enjoyable watch. So it makes perfect sense to me that these guys are the most representative of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles title. Here is the final ranking after looking at all 4 categories. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my rankings. Some of them were incredibly difficult to assess and some placements were pretty arbitrary, so I would love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to discuss how you think the comic iterations would shape up in this list. Like I mentioned previously, I have not read the Mirage or Archie comics yet, but if you want to offer your perspective on them or the ongoing IDW continuity, please feel free to share. And of course, this ranking is no indication of how good each iteration is as a whole. The original animated series from 1987 is genuinely one of my favorite pieces of TMNT media, even if it doesn't live up to its name particularly well. I hope you enjoyed watching this ranking, and I will see y'all next time.